Hello, everybody. Welcome back to our Bible study series going through the book of Esther. Very excited for today. This is going to be great. We are on day 4, and as such, go ahead and turn to chapter 4 of Esther. We're going into the real meat and potatoes of the story, as it were. And as you're turning there, I have to ask a serious question of you guys to ponder. I want you guys to think about this. Have you ever disagreed with an authority figure like a parent, a leader, or a boss? Because I know I have. And there are definitely times I do not want to do what I'm told because I just do not think it is a good idea. But here's another question. What about when that authority figure is God? Have you ever disagreed with God? Has God ever said something in the Bible you didn't like? Or has God offered forgiveness to someone you think shouldn't have been given it? Because I'll be honest, there are times I'm not always sure that I agree with God. Now, don't get me wrong, I trust God. I know He has the best plan. But there are times I do question. There are times I do say, man, God, why'd you do this? Or, God, why did it have to be this way? Take Jonah, for example. Y'all know Jonah and the whale, or Jonah and the big fish, as some say. We know Jonah, prophet of God, was told to go save Nineveh, but he wanted nothing to do with that. He didn't want to forgive Nineveh. So he tried to run, and God had him get eaten by a fish for 3 days. Then there was also Ananias, a Christian who God told to go and heal Saul of Tarsus and baptize him. Now, you got to think Ananias was terrified of Saul because Saul had been going around killing Christians across the Jewish world, and so he definitely was scared to go through with this. But want to know what Jonah and Ananias have in common? They were in the right place at the right time to do God's will. And God had a plan for them to be part of His will. Today we're going to talk about not always agreeing with God, but being in the right place at the right time to do His will. We get this idea in our heads that, God, when you're ready for me to do what you want me to do, just say so and I'll do it. I've said that to God so many times. God, I want to know your will for my life. You tell me what to do and I will do it. You tell me to jump, I won't even ask how high. I'll just jump, You tell me to go, I will go. I'm ready. Well, what happens if God says, all right, here's what I want you to do? And I go, God, that's not exactly what I thought you wanted me to do. And that's exactly the situation Esther is about to find herself in today. So let's go ahead and open up to our book of the Bible, chapter 4 of Esther. If y'all are ready, let's jump into it. We got a lot to read. We're going to go right into verse 1. Y'all ready? Let's go. When Mordecai learned of all that had been done, he tore his clothes, put on sackcloth and ashes, and went out into the city wailing loudly and bitterly. So before we go any further, for those who need a quick refresher, if you didn't catch last week's session, right now Haman, the highest official of the king, is mad at Mordecai because Mordecai refused to bow and show him reverence as the king demanded. So Haman doesn't just want revenge on Mordecai, he wants to take out all the Jews. So he has issued a decree that all Jews will be genocided in 1 year's time. In 1 year, all the Jews in the empire will be killed. This was ordered and agreed to by the king. So Mordecai's just gotten word about that, and as we can hear, he's pretty upset. Now, if you're thinking that this all sounds weird, what he's doing here, like he tearing his clothes, putting on sackcloth and ashes, wailing loudly, you might think, well, why is he doing that? Well, it's because, let's put it this way. Right now, there is no Twitter, there is no Facebook. He can't go on social media and let everyone know, gosh, guys, what a bummer. Now, this is how the Jewish people of this time would show great lamentation, ups, and anger. Okay? So, now you know. Let's keep going. Verse 2. But he went only as far as the king's gate, because no one clothed in sackcloth was allowed to enter it. In every province to which the edict and order of the king came, there was great mourning among the Jews, with fasting, weeping, and wailing. Many lay in sackcloth and ashes. Like I said, it goes into that. Verse 4, when Esther's eunuchs and female attendants came and told her about Mordecai, she was in great distress. She sent clothes for him to put on instead of his sackcloth, but he would not accept them. Then Esther summoned Hathach, one of the king's eunuchs, assigned to attend to her, and ordered him to find out what was troubling Mordecai and why. So Hathach went out to Mordecai in the open square of the city in front of the king's gate. Mordecai told him everything that had happened to him, including the exact amount of money Haman had promised to pay into the royal treasury for the destruction of the Jews. He also gave him a copy of the text of the edict for their annihilation, which had been published in Susa, to show to Esther and explain it to her. And he told him to instruct her to go into the king's presence to beg for mercy and plead with him for her people. Hathach went back and reported to Esther what Mordecai had said. Okay, so that was a lot, and I'm sorry we went on so long. Now, let's talk about all that's going on here. So, Esther hears about what's going on with Mordecai. She hears that he's very upset. He's wearing sackcloth and ashes. So she sends a servant to say, hey, go out there and give him some clothes. He doesn't need to be wearing those clothes. So what that means is Esther has no idea what's going on. She does not know what's happened. So Mordecai refuses to take the clothes. So Esther goes, okay, Hathach, eunuch, buddy, go talk to him. What's up? So Hathach goes out to find out what's going on, and Mordecai tells him everything, including, and I find this funny, including the amount of money Haman was willing to pay. Now, if you remember from last session, Haman said he would be glad to pay 10,000 talents. 10,000 talents. That is a lot of money. That's not even a small fortune. That is a large fortune. Just to kill all the Jews. And King Xerxes said, nah, man, you don't have to pay that. I trust you. Do what you need to do. So he didn't need to pay it. How did Mordecai know about the exact money amount? My guess is that Haman bragged a little about it. I'm guessing he walked by, made sure Mordecai was in earshot, and said, oh yeah, I was willing to pay 10,000 talents just to kill the Jews. So I'm willing to bet he was kind of bragging a little bit, but that's beside the point. But now we get another part here. Mordecai says, Esther, you need to go before the king and beg for mercy. Well, that makes sense. I mean, obviously. Like, she's the queen. She could just walk right in and say, hey, honey, about this whole killing the Jews thing, maybe don't do that, It's all good, right? She can fix it. But there's a problem. There's a problem with this plan. And Esther relays that to Mordecai beautifully in verse 10 and 11. Watch this. All right, verse 10 and 11. Here we go. Then she instructed him to say to Mordecai, quote, all the king's officials and the people of the royal provinces know that for any man or woman who approaches the king in the inner court without being summoned, the king has but one law, that they be put to death, unless the king extends the gold scepter and spares their lives. But 30 days have passed since I was called to go to the king. Now there it is. See, there's this law that exists. No one may appear before the king's chambers uninvited without permission, or they could be put to death. And that includes the queen. What, do you think the queen gets special permission? Remember, Xerxes is the Shahanshah. His queen is still beneath him in power and authority. Remember, he took away the crown from Vashti because she wouldn't come when he called. The queen is not above this. If Esther just walks into the king's throne room and starts asking for favors and the king hasn't asked for her, she could be killed for it. Scary thought. Even if it's just a simple, hey, honey, I need you to do me a favor, he could still kill her if he doesn't want to see her. Now, you might be thinking, where the heck did this law come from? Well, it has practical purpose and ceremonial purpose. For a practical purpose, it prevented assassination attempts and kept the king from being disturbed during important matters of state, Like, that's kind of the point. The king is very busy. He has a lot of private affairs to deal with for the state. If you barge in and interrupt him, that's not good for him or the state, and it's not good for your ears. And it also makes sure no one comes in that could be a potential assassin. Like, I didn't call for you. You might be an assassin. Kill him. That's kind of the point there. Now, Esther has announced that it has been 30 days since she was last called for. The king's busy right now. He doesn't want her to be disturbed. So she could risk death by going to see him. And now here comes Mordecai's response, and this is the golden line. Esther chapter 4, verse 12 through 14. Listen to this, all right? Follow along if you have a Bible. When Esther's words reported to Mordecai, he sent back his answer, quote, do not think that because you are in the king's house, you alone of all the Jews will escape. For if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance for the Jews will arise from another place, but you and your father's family will perish, and who knows but that you may have come to your royal position for such a time as this. You know, I've been doing a lot of research on Genghis Khan for my big Hatun video coming up, and I've learned a lot about him, but one thing I learned that fascinated me is a quote attributed to him that I want to share here. He said, quote, "Fate often chooses us in its own time, and we must choose how we respond to it. Most men will cower at it, or worse, become indecisive and hesitant to act. But the man who acts with purpose and will is a true hero, and even should he fail, his actions will be remembered forever." Now, Genghis was onto something there, and Esther is an example of this for sure. Guys, there are going to be moments in your life, maybe even one big crucial one, where you stand at the crossroads of doing what is right and what is easy. Yeah, I quoted Dumbledore, what about it? Because he's right. Not every right decision is the easy one. Sometimes there's risk involved. Sometimes you could lose something, risk something, or even have your whole world changed, but deep down you know it's right. And then there's the safe decision, the one that you know has the least amount of risk. Don't you think for one moment that God didn't put you in that position for this moment. So what will you do? This is the big part of Esther. This is the big part of Esther. Remember how I said that Esther is the one book of the Bible where God's name is not mentioned aside from Song of Solomon? Here it is. God is being mentioned here. Because Mordecai is a man of deep faith, and he believes firmly, somehow, some way, we will be saved. He knew that salvation was coming. He knew that they would be saved somehow. And Esther, maybe this is why you're here. Esther, this might be the big moment where you have to choose between what's right and what's easy. This is the moment that God has been planning for you from the moment of your birth. You have been made queen. Did you think that was an accident? No. You're here for a reason. From this, we learn three things. We learn three things, very important things. Take notes, guys. Number one, our refusal does not hinder God. Note what he says at the very beginning. Do not think that because you are in the king's house, you alone of all the Jews will escape. For if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance for the Jews will arise from another place. Well, even if you say no, we will still be saved. I'm going to tell you the truth, guys. God never stands up in shock. God never jumps out of his chair and goes, oh man, what are we going to do, guys? Let's put it this way. If God said, Esther, I need you to do this, and Esther said, no, I don't think so, God is not about to go, wait, what? No, oh no, Gabriel, guys, oh man. Esther said no, guys. Esther said no, what are we going to do? Oh, what are we going to do? I don't know what we're going to do. Esther said no, what do we do? I'm like, God doesn't do that. God has a plan, and you can be a part of that plan. If you say yes, great. If you say no, okay, get out of the way. God always has a plan in mind, and he's not going to lose any sleep by your refusal. You have the chance to be part of something great. It does not mean that greatness will not come when you say no. So why say no? Number two, second thing. Inaction is not salvation. You know, there's a game, Baldur's Gate 3. In a lot of situations where you're in a weird confrontation, you have the option to sometimes intervene on one side or the other, but there's a third option that often comes up. It's not my problem. This is not my deal. I want nothing to do with this. I'm stepping back. And I think that a lot of us look at that as a real world third option a lot. You know what? This isn't my problem. Just don't act. Back away. Don't deal with it. In some cases, I believe that is a necessary action. If you see two people arguing with each other and it has nothing to do with you, I don't think you need to get involved. But when God has called you to do something important, and you decide, you know what, I'm going to sit on the fence on this one. I'm not going to do anything. That's not salvation. I mean, sure, you haven't done anything bad. You just kind of stuck to your guns. But you didn't bring salvation. And it doesn't save you. Look at what Mordecai says. Do not think that because you are in the king's house, you alone of all the Jews will escape. For if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance for the Jews will arise from another place, but you and your father's family will perish. See, that's the thing. When you refuse God, when you decide that you're going to be inactive when God has a plan, that doesn't mean that God's going to go, well, all right. No. God's pushing you aside. And you can't complain, well, why would you do that? You had the chance. You had the chance. Think about it like this. Let's say that you're standing in a line, right, for a ride or something. The line's moving, you won't. You're on your phone and you're texting someone. The guy behind you says, dude, move up. No, man, I'm busy. Dude, move up. We got to move up the line. Would you be patient, man? Would it be totally within the guy behind you's right to just move you out of the way? Or for security to come and move you out of the way? I don't think that's unfair. I think that makes a lot of sense. So don't go, why'd you move me, man? You weren't moving. When you don't follow along with God, fine. That's your right to choose that. Don't be surprised when you get removed. People say that God's very unfair. I think that's a fair response, don't you? Number 3, your circumstances are not accidental. I've said it before and I'll say it again. God put Esther at the right time and at the right place. God put Jonah at the right time and the right place. God put Ananias in the right time and the right place. You can go to every book of the Bible and you will find someone involved who is in the right place at the right time. Your circumstances are not accidental. Guys, I'm in a very rough situation. I'm in a financial hot spot. I have no girlfriend, so I'm very lonely a lot of the time. I'm between jobs. It's a lot of stress. It's a lot of fear. But God has put me here for a reason. He's preparing me for something. I'm sure of it. I don't know what. I'm not sure yet. But I want to be in the right place at the right time and waking up every day knowing that there is a potential I could be in the right place at the right time for somebody means the world to me. And I'll tell you a little secret. Sometimes, even in my most difficult and hurtful situations, I have the chance to do great things. Years ago, my very first year teaching English at a high school, I met this girl. I'm not going to say her name. She probably wants to be anonymous. She was a sweet girl, but she was struggling. And she really wanted to improve. She told me in confidence, I don't think I can go to college. I don't think I can do it. I don't think I'm smart enough. So I worked with her. Now, she wasn't particularly religious. She had a problem with smoking pot. And she had difficult relations with those around her. But we had sessions, we had meetings, we worked with each other. I managed to get her to, get through the class marginally well. I think she actually did pretty well overall in her class. And not only did I find out that she did end up going to college, I got a message from her just a couple weeks ago saying that she was on a mission trip in Australia. She'd gained confidence. And I got to be a part of that. I'm not the only cause, for sure. But God put her in my classroom in my very first year of teaching. Do you think that was an accident? No. God gave me the chance to help someone. I'll give you another example. Years before that, I was assigned to work at a Kids for Christ camp. It's basically a sort of a day camp for kids. Parents drop their kids off and we do activities with them, maybe take them on field trips to different places like, a theme park or something. It's meant to just be a way for the kids to enjoy themselves. I was asked to be on staff. 2 young kids showed up from Korea. Their parents were Korean. The kids spoke no English. None. They could say hello and goodbye. That was it. They spoke nothing else. The mother was worried because, they can't speak English. She asked if there anyone at all who might be able to help them. My brother, who was there with me, called me over, said, "Hey man, you know some Korean?" I did. I knew some Korean and I was able to communicate with the boys. Do you think that was accidental? That the very same year for Kids for Christ that these two young Korean boys would show up, I would be on staff? Do you think that was accidental? The right place at the right time. And imagine if I'd said no, like, these two kids, I'm not great with Korean. I'm not fluent. Maybe it's best to just, dump them on someone else. Okay, but I miss out on my opportunity to change their lives. The teaching gig with the young girl that I talked to you about. I could have just said, if you don't think you can make it to college, college isn't for everyone, good luck. Do you think that she still would have gone on mission to Australia? Maybe. But I wouldn't have gotten to be part of it. I wouldn't have gotten to be a big part of that growth. Right place, right time, and choosing the right decision. Let's keep going. I know that we've spent a long time on that, but I really wanted to dive into it. Let's go into verse 15. Then Esther sent this reply to Mordecai, quote, "Go gather together all the Jews who are in Susa and fast for me. Do not eat or drink for 3 days, night or day, and I and my attendants will fast as you do. When this is done, I will go to the king, even though it is against the law, and if I perish, I perish." So Mordecai went away and carried out Esther's instructions. Now, a couple things here. Esther is saying, please fast for me. We're going to fast. Now, many people don't understand what a fast is. Fasting is essentially setting aside food for time and prayer. Now, in a modern context, you could fast in different ways. What fasting is, and I think my pastor put it best, is putting aside a daily ritual or a daily responsibility or daily, ritual and replacing it with time with God. So it could be food, but it could also be video games, movies, books, work. It could be just a time where you put aside, this is something I spend a lot of time doing each day. I'm going to put this aside for God. That's fasting. So for the next 3 days and nights, Esther is saying, everyone fast for me. Stop eating. Pray. I need this. And the Jews did it for her because Mordecai went out and told them all to do it. And then she says this, and I love it, if I perish, I perish. She's decided she's going to do this. This is it. She has set her heart on it. If I perish, I perish. Pretty crazy, right? Now, that's the end of chapter 4, but I want to go a little bit into chapter 5. Follow me on this. We are going into chapter 5, verse 1. Here we go. On the third day, Esther put on her royal robes and stood in the inner court of the palace in front of the king's hall. The king was sitting on his royal throne in the hall facing the entrance. When he saw Queen Esther standing in the court, he was pleased with her and held out to her the golden scepter that was in his hand. So Esther approached and touched the tip of the scepter. It worked. You got to think about what this looked like. King Xerxes probably sitting there frustrated. All these stupid documents, 30 days of this nonsense. This is ridiculous. I got to sign all these things. I don't want to. And then in walks Esther, this drop-dead, gorgeous bombshell of a woman that he hasn't seen in 30 days. He looks at her and goes, you are just what I needed to see. You are just, come here, honey. Come touch the scepter, please. I'm so glad you're here. I need a distraction. Right place, right time. God designed Esther to be beautiful. And God put Xerxes in a situation where he needed to see her at this time. Not an accident. Let's read verse 3. Get this. Then the king asked, "What is it, Queen Esther? What is your request? Even up to half the kingdom it will be given to you." "If it pleases the king," replied Esther, "let the king, together with Haman, come today to a banquet I have prepared for him." "Bring Haman at once," the king said, "so that we may do what Esther asks." So the king and Haman went to the banquet Esther had prepared. As they were drinking wine, the king again asked Esther, "Now, what is your petition? It will be given to you. And what is your request? Even up to half the kingdom, it will be granted." Now that's a big offer, isn't it? You got the king here. Esther, babe, what do you want? I just want to shower you with gifts. You tell me what you want, I'll do it. You want half the kingdom? Yours. You want a pony? Yours. You want it all? Yours. Keep in mind, he owns half the known world. He's probably not literally saying, I'll give you half the known world. He's probably saying, I'll give you your own provinces. I'll give you your own territories to rule over. But what he's clearly demonstrating is, Esther, what do you want? Ask me anything. I'll give you whatever you want. So what does she ask for? This might be the moment you might say, okay, ask for relief. But she doesn't. She says, I want you and Haman to come to a banquet. King Xerxes goes, yeah, sure, okay. Haman, we're going to a banquet, bro. Get your best. Look your best, man. Clean up. Why? Why didn't she ask right away? We'll talk about that in a minute. But then when they are at the banquet, when Haman, the king, and they're all having their fill and drinking wine, king goes, all right, we had this banquet, but this obviously isn't what you want. This isn't what you want to ask me. Tell me what you want. You'll get it. Whatever it is, tell me. So let's hear what he has to say. Let's hear what they say. Esther replied, my petition and my request is this. If the king regards me with favor, and if it pleases the king to grant me petition and fulfill my request, let the king and Haman come tomorrow to the banquet I will prepare for them. Then I will answer the king's question. And we'll pause there. Isn't that weird? Again, this is her chance. Ask. Just say, King Xerxes, my people are going to die. Save them. But she doesn't. She says one more time, I want to ask you to one more banquet. One more banquet. And then I'll tell you. Why is she stalling? Why is she waiting? Scholars have pondered this for a while. And I have a theory as to why. But before we go into the theory, we need to stop here. We need to pause and analyze a little bit about what happened. Esther was terrified to go before King Xerxes. She did not want to do what God wanted her to do. And you can't blame her. She's risking her life. But the reality is, like I said, refusing to do God's will does not hinder God's plan. Inaction is not salvation. And your circumstances are not accidental. God wants to do great things for you. And sometimes doing that means you have to make choices you don't always agree with. Because we have to have faith. Faith, I want to say this for the record because people misunderstand this about faith. Faith is not something that you talk about when life is easy. Faith is something you hold on to when life is hard. That's the true test of faith. And it's not about when times are easy, it's when times are hard. I'm sure it was easy for Esther to have faith when she was living a decent, fine life, when she was just hanging out as a queen for 30 days and didn't have to do anything. Now things are real. All the Jews could be destroyed, including herself. But if she goes into the king's palace, if she goes before the king, she could be killed. Oh, that's a little harder, God. That's a little bit more to ask of me, God. What kind of challenges are you facing? What are decisions that are facing you right now that could be very difficult? Do you have the faith to confront them? Do you have the faith to pick the right decision? Maybe you are in a time and place for such a time as this. That line is the cornerstone of the book of Esther. Perhaps you've been put in such a place for such a time as this. Esther, guys, what a book. And there's still more. There is still more. We got to find out what happens. We got to find out what happens next, right? And it's going to get wild. Next time we meet, we're going to talk about something that'll make you laugh your butt off. I guarantee it. It made me laugh. But for now, we'll pause there. We'll take a break. Hope you guys have been enjoying. I know I have. And I look forward to seeing you in my next video. Take care.